iPhone and Android users, we have a free app. Download it today. andrewhogue.com.
This is andrewhogue.com, of course, still Australia's first and only 24/7 metal radio station. Always great to catch up with my good old buddy, Mr. Devin Townsend, who's coming back to Australia for the umpteenth time in a
Really?
couple of weeks. And looking forward to hearing a bunch of tracks from the latest album, Lightwork, and everything else in the catalogue of Townsend that he can throw in.
Yeah, man.
What's going on, buddy?
Well, I'm good. I don't know how you are. I'm sure you're doing well. But I find that my life goes wildly between feeling like, fuck, everything is amazing, I'm so happy, to fuck, everything in my life is crazy, I'm so happy. So at least I'm happy, right? But yeah, man, the chaos goes between everything is not chaotic at all to just holy fuck. And today is one of those days.
Just one of those days.
It's one of those days. It's just one of those days.
So let's talk a bit about Lightwork and how it's been
Sure.
received. It came out about a year ago. And
Yeah.
what's your thoughts on it now? Because again, you've got a lot of music you've put out over the years.
I'm very happy that I did it. And I'm very happy that I finished it the way I did, which it was going in a direction that I wasn't going to be comfortable with. And so I kind of pulled the rug out from how it was going, and I chose to finish it in the ways that I was comfortable finishing it. The thing about Lightwork is it was the record I needed to do at the time, and I was happy with it, and still am happy with it. I think it's really cool. It's a really simple thing, right? And it resulted in two things. First, knowing that I can never do that again. I can never work with a team in the ways that I did with Lightwork, because I didn't love it, right? I liked the people, but I didn't love the process. And then number two, had I not gone through the making of that record, I wouldn't have had the kick in the ass to do what I've done now, which is create an environment for myself that I can be completely uncompromised musically and creatively from here on out without anybody telling me what to do. And I think that had I not gone through the Lightwork experience, which again, I'm happy with the record. It's a nice record. I don't know if I would have ended up doing what I've done. And I think it's going to really benefit the future for me, because I just decided towards the end of the record, I'm like, man, I'm never gonna allow myself to be compromised again, you know? And again, I don't want to say that in a way where somebody consciously compromised me, because it wasn't that. I asked for that treatment on the record, but I'm just not cut out for that process, and I needed to know that.
So had you been thinking about getting into the state where you're in full charge of everything, or like, I'm just trying to understand how you hadn't thought
I guess
of that before.
I hadn't thought of that.
Okay.
You know, I guess I've been sort of under the assumption that you can delegate things to a group of people and facilitate your work as a coalition in a way. And I didn't realize until I really got into that process how the speed in which I actualize my ideas is such that having to run it past anybody is it's just not for me, man. I found myself really frustrated. And so it was a wake-up call in a sense, and I was like, okay, I need to make a facility for myself where I can do everything immediately, and I can offshore things to people where I know they'll do what I need, and it'll be quick and efficient and the way that I like it. And you know, I think collaborating with artists is one thing, but there are certain processes that have evolved over the course of the music industry and popular music that I always thought, you know, what would it be like to run my work through that machine? How would it end up? And it just isn't for me. It's not good or bad. It's just not for me. And so I've spent the last 2 years since finishing Lightwork essentially building a scenario for myself where the next round of material that I'm going to do is going to be zero compromise, right?
So I get the impression that you're the work or where you're at now is very instantaneous, and like you said, to run it by people causes some delay in that
Yeah,
process as
very
well.
much. Very
And
much.
was that sort of some self-doubt there of just thinking, I couldn't consider trying it this way that you're doing it now?
Yeah, I think, as you would probably agree, life tends to provide a curriculum in the sense that it, like, if you doubt yourself, uh, it's good to know that you don't need to doubt yourself.
Yep.
And I think the creative avenues that I've experimented with over the past couple of years were maybe fueled by self-doubt, but it wasn't until I was in a situation where I could recognize, oh, I don't need to doubt myself, that I uh, had the strength to do the things that were required, right? I mean, there's a certain amount of comfort that comes from routine, and to break out of that, there's a lot of fear, right? Like, is this going to be received well? Am I going to fall on my face? Do I have the strength to do this? Do I have the support I need to do this? And then all of a sudden recognizing, in order to do this, I've got to come off the road for a while. I've got to invest all this money. I've got to do all this sort of stuff. But there was really a sense of, well, fuck it, man. It's like the only way that you're going to be able to do these things that you're capable of on some fundamental level is to just do it. There's no other way to do these things. And so that's what I chose to do. And had I not gone through the experience that I have with the lightwork process, um, I don't think I would have been privy to my own strength, right? So I'm glad.
Now let's talk about the last, I guess, year with the Lightwork record and getting out on tour. Of course, you've done 2 tours with Dream Theater. Now, a lot of folks would say that's kind of a match made in heaven because Dev's a prog head and so a Dream Theater. But tell us a bit about how that all sort of went down, and did you find that the audience was quite receptive to the talents of the Townsend?
The TTs. I
Yeah.
mean, Dream Theater was always a band that I had at arm's length uh, because they were so technically proficient that it was beyond me in a lot of ways. I never listened to them, but not because I had a lack of respect. It's just they were never on my radar. In the same way that I guess even like Slayer was never on my radar when I was younger, right? It's just some bands you just miss.
Yep.
Um, and I think because the nature of the music was very fastidious, I had always assumed that my lack of technical knowledge would not go down with the audience, because as much as I clearly know what I'm doing, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, I don't know what scales I'm playing. I don't know what modes I'm playing. I just learned everything by ear. I learned how to produce and mix by ear. It's like, so theoretically, I'm not in the same camp. Like, those guys know what they're doing. So I guess that I went into the experience of touring with Dream Theater thinking that erroneously, perhaps the audience was going to be really judgmental
Mm.
about what I do. But they actually were very supportive. I think that that was another wake-up call, as I was able to understand that just because you don't theoretically understand what you're doing, by no means does that mean that you don't understand what you're doing. I completely understand what I'm doing, and I guess I needed that validation from a learned audience to say, no, hey, this is cool, we like it. And that was really nice. And then compounding that, having never really spent any time with the Dream Theater camp, I was maybe nervous that they would be arrogant, like maybe they just were going to be very standoffish. But the opposite was true. They were just so supportive, man. Like, they were like, you can use our rig, you can use our lighting package, we'll feed you, you know, let's hang out. Like, it was really one of these things where I came out of that with a group of people. I was like, oh, these guys can be friends. Actually, it was just a very unexpected pleasure actually playing with those guys and touring with those guys. They're great people.
Good experience. Now let's talk a bit
Yeah.
about Infinity. I know that's coming out in the coming weeks, the 25
Yeah.
year anniversary. The cover art is awesome. When
Fuck.
did you feel the need to sort of go back to reflecting on what was a massive pivotal moment in your personal life
Yeah.
aside from music? I mean,
Yeah,
go through
man.
the archives. We just like, well, what made
Well,
you
I'll tell
think,
you,
what brought it up? The inspiration
First off,
to
man,
rediscover.
when I got asked to redo the cover, my first thought was like, "Fuck that, dude! Are you kidding me?"
Why not? You've been making gains.
Well, I've been making gains to keep myself from my back going out, but I'm certainly
Yeah.
not, planking for 40 minutes as we talked about in the past, right? Um, but when they asked, I just kept going, "No, it'd be cool, it'd be cool." So I did it, and that was, dude, that was nerve wracking. And so at first they're like, "Well, there's this lady that's on tour with you, and she can do the photo." And again, I was like, "Dude, I'm 51-year-old. I'm not gonna hang the prawn out for somebody at this point. So uh I talked to a buddy of mine, like a photographer. I was like, "Brother, I'm gonna ask you to do something that sucks for both of us." And I was like, I need to recreate this photo. And he was like, "Oh God, all right." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we did it. But I think in a lot of ways, how even that photo shoot acts as an analogy for the whole idea of redoing Infinity. It's that I'm not ashamed of anything that I've done. You know, I some people who maybe in the past had done a heavy record and then now all of a sudden they don't do heavy music anymore. They like try to eliminate that part of their world. Celtic Frost. I don't know if they ever talk about Cold Lake, but maybe they do, maybe they don't. But
Cherry orchards.
yeah, man. But I guess the whole idea is for me, it's like that was just that's where I was at, in the same
Mm.
way that Lightwork was where I was at, same way that Empath's where I was at, same way as the Moth is where I'm going. I mean, so I think these act as opportunities for me to honor these things that I've done in the past, because I never went into any of these decisions that I did based on trying to be an asshole. Even if I ended up being an asshole, I never went into these things thinking, "Oh, I'm going to fuck with people." I just thought that was what I needed to do. So I did it. And so going back in time and honoring those things is important for my current musical progress as well, because to see where you've been allows you to sort of reflect on your gains, so to speak.
Mhm.
And so going back to Infinity and listening to it, like we're doing a remaster, and that was the first record I ever engineered, first record I ever produced, really, first one I ever mixed. And man, that's a hell of an undertaking if you don't know what you're doing. So I see how far I've come on a technical level, and yeah, I'm proud of it, man. I was proud of it.
And how did you find out all the sort of, well, find the, I guess the extra B-sides, all the stuff? Like, did you have everything still archived, stuff you hadn't even considered?
Well, I mean, I don't know if you know, but while we were making Infinity, we had a big flood at our house, and I lost everything. Like I lost everything, all the tapes. I got nothing remains. So I had to scour and I had to look for it, and I had to find, one or two CDs that had certain things of it. And then I had to find this. I had spent all this time making this crazy artwork thing, this book called IMI that was all hand in hand with the Infinity Time. But I had to find that. It was all tattered and everything. But again, it's like there's a certain amount of self-care that went into it that I think was really lovely in a way, because I was so confused back then. I was going through so many different and new things that at the time I was questioning whether or not I'd even get through that experience. So to be here 25 years later and be able to scrounge together all these things that I'd put so much effort into at the time, whether or not they're technically perfect sounding recordings, which I assure you they're clearly not, um, there was really, I could see how much care I had put into it at the time. And so reflecting on it, I think was really healthy.
So what would be the one lesson you kind of get now when you go back to the Infinity era of just your own personal life? Because like I said, it was quite pivotal and there was some serious
Yeah.
changes going on with you right at that time.
Yeah, man. Well, if I had to distill it down to one thing, it would be, I think you have to be at peace with your nature. And I think that part of that comes with accepting things that are intrinsic to your nature that maybe aren't ideal, right? Like, never stop trying to improve yourself, but also cutting yourself a bit of slack. I never did that. You know what I mean? I was always so critical of all my things that I was tempted by or all the things that I was interested in because I just had convinced myself that my internal image of myself was such that you don't do those things, you know? That's what bad people do or whatever your way of spinning it. But the thing that I had to make peace with, and I think I have to a degree, is like, what do I need? Who am I? As opposed to what this idealized image of myself is. It's like it's okay to be where I'm at, you know? And that I think I needed to learn because the amount of mistakes that I made during the infinity period, my reaction to those mistakes was confusion. I was like, how could I do that? How could I do that? And I think in hindsight, it's like, well, it's because that's where you were.
Mhm.
You there's no judgment about it. It's not like there's like an overarching, moral compass to the universe in general. There's only cause and effect. And if you do this, that's the effect.
Yep.
If you're willing to accept that as the effect, then yeah, you know? And I think that the only compass that you need to put on your activities are, well, how's this going to affect the people I care about? How's this going to affect people? How's it going to affect the work and the people that listen to what you say? So your accountability to yourself needs to be first and foremost. But what comes with that is also um, the awareness that what you may need and what you may be feeling, may not fit into this internal idealized image of yourself that you've created. And that was a huge lesson for me, man. And I think that nowadays I can be really much more fearless with what I do because I'm not afraid of myself,
Yep.
and that's great.
Yeah, that's pretty massive. So with, I mean, again, going through your catalog, it's enormous. Was there any other releases that you'd considered revisiting, or just Infinity just sort of stuck out and you thought, this is something I want to sort of look into? And because again, like
Well, I
you've got
think
so many other
I'm
records.
I'm fortunate that 25 years, every time a year goes by, something else is 25 years old, right? So I think we'll
Mm,
probably just revisit them one at a time.
yeah,
And the reason for that is they were all my entire world while they were going on. Like my entire world was infinity during infinity. My entire world was physicist during physicist. It's like my entire world right now is the fucking moth. It's like, although I don't know if I'll call it the fucking moth, but maybe that's a great way to go at it.
tell us
So
quickly
I think,
about that. How's that coming along?
well, it's embroiled with the same amount of drama and existential reckoning that all of them are, man, like
Yeah.
since the beginning. But one thing that I am very happy with is the awareness. I'm like, well, that's just you, dude. That's what
Mm,
you do. That's what you do. And it's always going to be that way. I'm anticipating that hopefully we'll be talking to each other when we're 85 and you'll be like, well, how's, you know, pyramid scheme or whatever your album's called at that time. I'll be like, oh, I don't even know. I wonder if, you know what I mean? It's like, that's just kind of my deal. And
but if you're aware that that's your deal, then you have
it
a
is.
chance to
I
approach it
am.
differently too.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's like, I love it, man. I think it's like, it's not the easiest path, but it's the path. So you have to love it because the option is to resist it. And that's just a lot more effort than I've got right now.
Mhm. Well, let's check out the tour dates just quickly, of course, because it's coming up very fast. The first show is on the 8th of November in Fremantle at the Metropolis, the
Mm.
10th of November in Melbourne at the Forum. Sydney is sold out, which is awesome. That's at the Metro. And the show that wraps up is in Brisbane on the 12th at the Tivoli. So, again, it's always a pleasure having you back in Oz. Like I said,
You,
it's
buddy.
I've lost count the amount of times you've been here, but you've got
Me
such a
too.
audience here that love and respect the work of the Townsend.
Well, I appreciate it, man. It's like, and I was saying in the last interview, and I'll say it again, it's like the audience I have is the audience that I want. You know,
Mhm.
I'm not interested in, and I think a lot of what ends up happening is people get stars in their eyes. They say, well, you've got a devoted audience, and I'm so grateful for that. But people are like, well, it has to be more. We need more people. We need to expand it. We need to, and I'm like, but I don't have any desire to do that. You know what I mean? Maybe it's a lack of ambition, or maybe it's just I love what I do, and I love the freedom to go through the process that I go through without having to tailor it to some expectation commercially, right? And that's I'm so happy for that. So
Chase that
I'm looking
external
forward.
validation that a lot of artists tend to get caught up in.
Well, there's certainly still some of that. I mean, I'd be lying to you if I said that I don't enjoy the fact that people enjoy it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, man, I'm just happy to play for the people that really want to hear it and understand why I'm doing it. And that, it's Spinal Tap, man. It's like I'm happy for the audience to become more selective.
No, the audience is becoming more selective.
That's it. I got to bolt, man. I got to go to this thing. It's great talking to you, man.
Yeah,
I look forward
likewise.
to actually talking more, man. So let's catch up soon. And I'm going to leave rudely right now. So I
All
hope
right.
that's okay.
So just quickly choose a track from Lightwork and something from Infinity to conclude our chat, Townsend.
All right. Well, let's listen to Lightworker from Lightwork, and let's listen to oh God, on Infinity. It's such a gong show. There's no war.
All right, done deal. We'll see you in a couple of weeks, Dev. It's always a pleasure to talk to you
You
again,
too,
Mr.
buddy.
Townsend. Look after yourself.
You too. I'll talk to you for real next time we see each other.
100%.
Cheers, buddy.
See you, mate.
Bye bye.